The nightmare begins. It was 3:45 a.m. when I jolted awake, heart pounding and drenched in sweat. My room felt stifling, and my chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath. The remnants of the nightmare clung to me like cobwebs, faint but unforgettable. In the dream, I had been in my room just like now, but there was a man standing outside my window. He wasn't moving, he just stared. His figure was unnaturally still, yet his soaked clothes clung to his frail body, water dripping in rhythmic beats onto the ground below. His skin was an unnatural shade of pale blue, like someone who'd been underwater for far too long. But it was his face, or rather the lack of it, that haunted me. The darkness obscured his features, except for his mouth. It opened unnaturally wide, stretching until it seemed to split his face in half. That's when I woke up. I sat up in bed, trembling. The image burned into my mind. What was that? A bad dream? Sure, but why did it feel so real? I've always believed dreams carry messages, and this one didn't feel random. Something about it clawed at my gut, as if it was trying to tell me something. I heard noises downstairs. My dad's voice, muffled and low. He was talking to my mom as he got ready for work. I caught snippets of the conversation. She just needs rest. The hallucinations will stop eventually. Hallucinations? Who was he talking about? My mom? I felt a pang of unease but decided not to press it. It wasn't my place to pry into their adult problems. Still, the thought lingered in my mind as I dragged myself to the shower, hoping to wash away the cold sweat and dread. That evening, my younger brother and I came home from school. The house was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that makes you check over your shoulder. "Mom!" I called out, dropping my bag by the door. No answer. Her car was in the driveway, so I knew she was home. My brother shrugged, muttering something about her probably being upstairs. I went up to check. When I reached her door, it was locked. I knocked softly. "Mom, you in there?" Pressing my ear to the door, I heard faint murmurs inside. "Yes, I'm fine," she answered after a long pause, but her tone was off, strained, almost panicked. I backed away, deciding not to push her. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe she just needed rest. But as I walked toward my room, something stopped me. The bathroom door was slightly ajar, and water was pooling out onto the hallway floor. My stomach dropped. I pushed the door open and froze. The bathtub was overflowing, water cascading onto the tiles, the surface rippling unnaturally. It was as if the water itself was alive, moving in slow, deliberate waves. I reached for the faucet to turn it off, but a sound stopped me. A faint gasp, like a muffled scream, coming from the water itself. "What the hell?" I whispered, backing away. Before I could think, my mom's bedroom door slammed open. She stormed out, looking disheveled and pale. Her eyes darted around like she was searching for something, or someone. "What happened here?" I asked, pointing to the flooded bathroom. I fell asleep," she stammered. "Must have left the water running." Her voice was shaky, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. She hurried past me with a towel, avoiding further questions. Something was wrong, very wrong. That night, I confided in my brother. "Do you think Mom's been acting weird?" I asked as we sat in the living room. He shrugged, more interested in his video game than my concern. "She's probably just tired," he said dismissively. Frustrated, I told him about the nightmare I had. His reaction was instant. He turned pale, his controller slipping from his hands. "What?" I asked, unnerved by his expression. I had a dream too," he admitted. "There was a man in my room. He was soaked, dripping water everywhere. But his back was to me and couldn't move. Felt so real. My blood ran cold. How could we have had the same dream? Couldn't be a coincidence. Did he do anything?" I asked hesitantly. "No," he said. "He just stood there, but I felt like he was waiting for something." The next day, things got even stranger. Mom seemed more agitated than ever. She snapped at us over small things and kept glancing at the clock. Finally, she announced she was running an errand and warned us. in a tone that made my skin crawl. "Stay out of my room. Do you hear me? Stay out." As soon as she left, my brother and I exchanged a look. "We have to see what she's hiding," I said. He nodded. "Let's do it." Her room was locked, of course, but we were determined. Grabbing a ladder from the garage, we climbed up to her bedroom window. It was unlocked, and we slipped inside. The room looked normal at first. Tidy, nothing out of place. Then we noticed it. A puddle of water seeping out from under the closet door. "Do you see that?" my brother whispered. I nodded, heart hammering. Slowly, we approached the closet. The air grew colder with every step. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. When I opened it, the world seemed to tilt. Our father lay on the floor, his body soaked, his skin a horrifying shade of blue. His mouth was wide open, frozen in a silent scream. For a moment, neither of us moved. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with the smell of stagnant water. Then, behind us, we heard a sound, a low, guttural gasp. We turned, and there he was, the man from our nightmares, soaked, silent, staring. We stood frozen in place at the sight before us. My father lay there, motionless, his skin cold and pale. Drops of water were still dripping from his soaked clothes, creating a puddle on the floor that smelled musty. "This can't be real," I muttered, but the only sound that came out of my mouth was a hoarse breath. "This can't be," my brother said, but his eyes were fixed on something behind me. I turned, and that was when I saw him, the man from the nightmare. He stood there, in the middle of the room, not making a sound, not moving. His clothes were soaked, water running down his sleeves and pant legs, making an eerie dripping sound on the floor. He didn't speak, he just looked. His gaze, or rather, his empty eye sockets, seemed to pierce right through me, as if he were looking into my very soul. Then suddenly, he tilted his head at an odd angle, as if testing my reaction. His mouth opened wider and wider, until it seemed as if his face was being torn apart. A horrible scream rang out, but it didn't come from his mouth. It came from everywhere. Sounds in the night. Then everything turned to chaos. My brother and I backed away, trying to keep our distance. But he didn't move, just stood there, head tilted, as if he were examining our every move. "Run!" I yelled, pulling my brother by the hand. We rushed out of the room, my hands shaking as I slammed the door shut. But the dripping sound continued. It didn't seem to be in the room anymore. It was everywhere. The sound of our footsteps on the cold tile floor seemed to blend in with the sound of the water. "Call Mom! Call Mom!" my brother shouted, but I knew my mother wouldn't answer the phone. She was hiding something. We ran down the stairs, but the noise got louder and louder. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered, the bulbs flickered, then went out. In the darkness, the sound of running water grew closer. We found the light from the flashlight on the kitchen table. It shone on the floor, where strange water stains were spreading in all directions. "What the hell is going on?" my brother whispered. I didn't answer, just swung the flashlight around the room. In a hidden corner, I noticed an old family photo lying face down on the table. When I lifted it, the back of the frame was damp, and a scrawled message appeared. "He wants to return what he lost." I didn't understand. Who wrote this? Return what? I turned to my brother, but he shook his head, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. "Maybe it was Mom," he muttered. We decided to rummage through the living room. The drawers were full of miscellaneous items, but a small wooden box caught my eye. Inside was a bunch of old keys and a worn map with notes in red marker. Stillwater Lake, tragedy of 1992. Stillwater Lake? I muttered. That was where Mom had said she grew up, but we had never gone there with her. "Does this have anything to do with Dad?" my brother asked, panicked. I had no answer, but everything seemed to lead us to that lake. Maybe that was where all the secrets were buried. My brother and I couldn't wait for Mom to come home. After packing a few things, we snuck out of the house and drove to Stillwater Lake, about an hour away. When we got there, the lake was shrouded in a thick fog. The air was unnaturally cold, and everything was eerily quiet. "Are you sure we should stay here?" my brother asked, his voice trembling. I nodded, though my heart was pounding. "If there's anything about Dad, we have to find out." We followed the map to an old, dilapidated wooden house by the lake. The door was rotten, and a musty smell hit us as soon as we entered. Inside, we found a bunch of old photos and documents. One was of my parents with another man. That man, the one from the dream. The documents reveal a chilling story. In 1992, my mother and that man, James Stillwater, had a relationship. But after a big argument by the lake, James disappeared. Many believe he drowned. But the last photo shows my mother standing by the lake, her eyes filled with fear. "How does this have anything to do with you?" I asked, but no one answered. The sound of running water behind me pulled me out of my thoughts. We turned around and saw him, the man, now fully present, dripping onto the wooden floor. But this time he was not alone. Another figure began to appear in the water. It was my father. "Dad?" I exclaimed. But my father did not look at me, just stood there, mumbling incoherent words. "Let's go!" My younger brother pulled me by the hand, but I could not take my eyes off my father, and the man still stood there, his eyes lifeless. James's spirit doesn't want to leave. He's demanding justice, and my mother knows it. This secret will not only destroy our family, it will also unleash an unstoppable nightmare. Will we find a way to free James's spirit and save our family? Or will everything be plunged into darkness forever? My father's silhouette stood there, trembling, as if trying to say something. But every time he spoke, only the sound of running water and a horrible hissing echoed. I wanted to run to him, to pull him away from this nightmare, but the other man, the ghost of James Stillwater, stood in front of me, his eyes as empty as bottomless black holes. "What does he want?" I shouted, tears streaming down my face. James didn't answer. He just pointed silently to an old table in the corner, where a small wooden box lay hidden under a thick layer of dust. My younger brother walked over, trembling, and inside was a strange object. A silver necklace, set with a jade green stone. "What is this?" my brother asked, but no one answered. A chill ran down my spine as I picked up the necklace. The image in my mind flashed. My mother, younger, standing by Stillwater Lake. An argument had broken out between her and James. I saw her struggle with him, and then she pushed him into the water. "No," I whispered, but the vision continued. James did not die immediately. He groped, trying to hold on to the necklace she wore. She yanked, and he sank deeper into the lake, the necklace breaking from its chain. Drops of blood mixed with the water, and all were buried under the bottom of Stillwater. "Mom, you killed him," I said, my voice hoarse, the reality weighing heavily on me. James nodded, then slowly raised his hand toward me, as if asking me to return the necklace. "This is why Dad died, right?" I asked, but James didn't respond. I turned to my father. He looked pained, as if his soul was being pulled deeper into the abyss. At that moment, I understood. James wanted more than the necklace. He wanted redemption from our family, or another life to replace it. "How do we end this?" I cried, tears streaming down my face. James didn't speak, but his silhouette began to fade, blending into the water that was filling the room. As he disappeared, whispers rang out around him. "Return the necklace to the lake." I clutched the necklace, feeling the coldness spread through my hands. That was the answer. We must return the necklace to where it belongs, Stillwater Lake. But will that be enough to appease James's spirit? Or will he drag us down to the bottom of the lake with him? My brother and I hurried back to Stillwater Lake in the dark, carrying the necklace. The air grew colder, and a thick mist covered the lake. Everything was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. "What do we do next?" my brother asked, his voice trembling. I looked at the necklace, remembering the blurry images. We had to perform a ritual, a way to make amends. I took a small knife from my pocket, cut my finger, and dropped a few drops of blood onto the jade. "We have to give it back," I said. I walked to the edge of the water and knelt down, placing the necklace on the lake's surface. The water began to ripple violently, as if the lake were breathing. A cold air blew through, and from the mist, James appeared again. "This is what you wanted," I shouted, throwing the necklace into the water. As the necklace sank, James's scream rang out, tearing through the night. But he didn't rush at us. Instead, my father's silhouette appeared beside us, as if dragging James's soul into the lake. "No, Father," I screamed, trying to dive in, but my brother held me back. "Don't, you'll die," he shouted. When James and my father disappeared beneath the water, Stillwater Lake returned to its quiet. But I knew things would not be the same. We returned to the house in silence, and my mother waited there, her face pale when she saw us. "It's over," I said, but she just shook her head silently. "No, you don't understand," she whispered. "He'll never stop. He took your father, and he'll come back when he gets the chance." The bracelet was just the beginning. My brother and I looked at each other, a cold feeling settling over us. We never set foot in Stillwater Lake again that night, but the dripping sound still echoed through the house when it rained. And sometimes, I could still see the wet silhouette of a man standing outside the window, looking at me with empty eyes. The spirit of James Stillwater took my father, but he is still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his chance to drag us into another nightmare. Would you dare to return to Stillwater Lake? Leave a comment below and let me know.
Thanks for listening to today's story. Let us know what you think. If you want to hear more scary stories, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode when we upload it. We'll always be here and welcome you.